had some images to show us. Let's put up first a satellite image of the compound that was just distributed to the news media. This is the area north of Islamabad. A number of satellite images over the months and years showing increased building in the area and showing the compound growing and added security there. Now, second, after you see the C.i.a drawing that was of the compound itself, that tells us a good deal about how this unfolded. Let's put that up and leave it up for a few minutes so we can walk people through what transpired when the house. So stay with me, Drew, and look at that image. According to officials, Osama Bin Laden was living in that center building you see, a tall building, living on the second and third floor. Right, that second and third floor area. Now, I don't know if you can see, Drew, but up that tall building, you see a stripe, but actually that's a representation of a 7-foot security wall that was around that upper floor of the building, and the compound already had 18-foot walls. So this was a very secure area. That's where Bin Laden was. When the U.S. troops landed there, the Navy SEALs brought in by Army helicopters, they went through these buildings and cleared room by room as the firefight was breaking out. But officials telling us a short time ago, that upper floor was one of the last areas they got to, one of the last areas they cleared. That's where they found Bin Laden. They say he did put up resistance and that he was killed in the firefight, but they refused to offer very many details. Was he firing? Was he running away? Was he making a last stand? But it was inside the area on the upper floor of that building where finally the U.S. military got Osama Bin Laden.
So it's your impression, Barbara, they didn't land on that roof, they didn't drop on the roof, they came from the ground up?
Well, what we believe is there were several helicopters and they landed in a number of places around there. You know, that's a really good, I don't know if you can see, Drew, there are satellite dishes, there are wires, there's a number of obstructions. In fact, one helicopter did go down due to a mechanical failure, the military says. So they lit that one on fire so nobody could get to it, torched it, and the assault team got on other helicopters to fly away. But landing in these areas where there's these high walls, you run the risk of blowing dirt, blowing sand. This is very tricky business for helicopters. They like a nice, clear, hard surface to land. Pilots like to see exactly where they're going, of course. And you can see this is a pretty rural type of situation in terms of there's residences around, but it's not all that built up. So this was dicey business to get in and dicey business to get out.
Sure, not to mention just utility wires. Barbara, the burial at sea, a lot of people I've been talking to, still not clear why that took place. In your background briefing, did they give you any information?
Yeah, I mean, the administration's walking a fine line here between wanting to tell people or say they want to tell people what has happened and diplomacy, to say the least. They say they could find no land alternative for Osama Bin Laden. But the fact is that they didn't have much time to even think about it because they didn't want to warn any other countries this was underway. Some discussion out there that they might have thought about approaching the Saudis to take his body. We do not know if they asked the Saudis. We know they thought about it. So the next alternative was burial at sea because they did not want Bin Laden's body to become a shrine, a sanctuary, a rallying point for militants or for Al-Qaeda that might make pilgrimages, if you were, essentially, to his burial site. So he was brought onto the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson, which was out in the North Arabian Sea. The Pentagon going to great lengths to say the burial at sea followed all Islamic religious practices. He was wrapped in a white cloth. Prayers were said, and translated into Arabic, they say the body was weighted, it was put on a plank, and basically tipped out into the sea. In terms of the physical, that's the end of Osama Bin Laden. In terms of his spiritual strength, his appeal to the militant world, that still remains to be seen.
Barbara, let me ask you one more question. You may not know the answer. The helicopters, how far did they travel? Was there a via point? Because that's a long way from this town to the sea to where a ship might be.
Right. I'm going to be very candid and say we don't really know the answer to that yet. There has been discussion that came from the sea. There is also discussion that came from Afghanistan or even inside Pakistan. Inside Pakistan is not likely because the military and the intelligence community is going to great lengths to say they did not inform Pakistan about this assault mission. There has been continuous concern, as we know, Drew, you've reported a lot on this, that the Pakistani military and intelligence services are infiltrated, and if the U.S. had let the Pakistanis know anything about this, that the word might have been leaked and Bin Laden might have gotten away. So they told nobody. This, I would have to say, is one of the most closely held military and security operations I think we have seen in years. Drew?
Barbara Starr, fascinating details on what took place in Pakistan, including the burial at sea, weight him down and throw him overboard into the Arabian Sea. Barbara Starr, thank you so much. Here is your chance to talk back on the big story of the day, Osama Bin Laden's death. Carol Costello